Thank you, Secretary. Before I ask for input from members, I'm going to ask the Honourable Speaker if she wants to add anything to this item.
Thank you. Greetings, Honourable Chair and the committee members. Thank you, sir. But I think the Secretariat covered me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But then I will allow any of the honourable members.
Honourable Chair.
Honourable Chief Whip.
Greetings to you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and all other honourable members that are present. I just wanted to say that I have finally connected. Thanks.
Thank you so much for informing me. I will then proceed and open the floor on the issues of the resolutions and the responses to the resolutions. Is there any input from any of the members present? I think if we look at the responses, there's definitely been quite a bit of action that is on each and every of these resolutions. I think the one just coming up to me as we sit here today is the issue of the no-shows and so on. I will once again make it a point of it that it is an important factor that we as legislators must make sure from our side. We don't actually need whips to tell us what is the right thing to do. We know what is the right thing to do. One must follow it up, take responsibility for your position here and make sure that if your name is booked into accommodation, that you will be there. And if there is any problem, to immediately take action and inform the officials. Honourable Madlopa, I see your hand.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Greetings to the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the Secretary, and all my colleagues and the management of the legislature. Chair, we want to appreciate the action that has been done by the management following up on our resolution to be implemented. I know that, Chair, these are matters arising on the decisions that we took as a committee. But I'm not sure when are we going, Chair, to get an update in regard to the precinct, because it was also a decision of this legislature that the precinct must be built, because we are having a challenge really in regards to that. But I may be out of order, Chair, but I'm just checking.
Honourable Madlopa, I think your phone also recognized the fact that you might be out of order. I think that is a fair point. Maybe the Secretary can assist us on that.
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't part of the resolutions of the last meeting, so we didn't prepare on it. Chairperson, we are obviously in the hands of Treasury in terms of funding for the building of the new building. And unless we have, at the moment, our eyes are on constant savings, and we have been advised that there's no money, so we can take it up further at a level of financing with the meeting with the MEC, but we don't, at this point in time, it's not under our control. There is a process that was being guided through the through Treasury with the Public Works and the Legislature, but not much momentum has, we haven't got much momentum on that due to the finances. Thank you, Chair. I think as the Speaker should continue. Thank you. With your permission.
Thank you so much. I see the Honourable Speaker's hand and also Honourable Madlopa. I'll first give Honourable Madlopa quickly opportunity.
No, I was requesting that I agree with the secretary that they never prepared for it. Maybe if they never prepared for it because it was not part of agenda, we request that we get a full report.
Yeah.
Regarding the official reports that will be coming to the committee, Chair.
On that point, I agree, but I would also agree with the secretary that the report must be prepared after we've engaged with the MEC, because then we know what is Treasury stance on it, and we can include it in our report. Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Chair, thank you to you and to the Secretary. Our main agreement is just to supplement by way of memory to the Standing Committee on Oversight on one of the outstanding discussions with government, the executive, the MEC Treasury and the MEC Public Works in the previous term. It has never happened. There was a decision in the previous term that was not fulfilled in terms of both MEC Treasury and MEC Public Works coming to the meeting. And at that point, we had raised an issue that we're still waiting for them. And there were matters that we could not be able to fully respond to, which we believed by law should be responded to by us as a custodian of the building that would be coming to us. In fact, I mean, as a recipient, so to say, end user, or whatever the word, that Public Works as well as the Provincial Treasury would be building. So I also want to take that full responsibility alongside the chairperson to be reminding the two departments probably of the resolutions that were never fulfilled, of having them both come to the meeting. I am sure that members would remember those who were in the previous committee, in the previous terms committee, because I see there's a lot. There's deputy, there's chief whip of the legislature. There's also Honorable Kika, I so believe, was also part to a certain level. And then we will do that to assist the committee to have this report. I also must say, Chair, from our own side, it has been a matter that we should apologize for, because we should have been keeping tabs and speaking to the committee regarding it. Thank you for the manner that you have accepted it. And also, Honorable Maldopa raising it, what is outside what we were discussing, but thank you for allowing her. It helped us too.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Yes, I think the report that will be, or the presentation on how the legislature budget is compiled, that's going to be done today by Treasury, will also make it easier for us to understand where we are at the moment, and why the issue about the precinct and so on might be an difficult thing to deal with. But thank you anyway so much. I take it there is nobody else on this issue. Is there anybody else that wants to ask questions? So I will then move to item number 7. And at this point, the standing on new matters, I would want to bring in this detailed presentation on how the legislative budget is complied. I will ask Carol, I think she will present it. Unfortunately, we did not have a lot of time to go through it, so I will implore Carol to be patient with the committee and be as thorough as possible. Carol, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the honourable members, as well as the officials that are present. My team are present as well. Nelly Shezi, you're all familiar with, as well as Tanya Stalal. We also have Hobby, who joined us as the director, and we've got Joanna Abdul-Ban, who will actually be undertaking the presentation. But I just thought I would just give an indication, and I know in the recent engagements that we've had with particularly the Finance Portfolio Committee, We certainly highlighted the challenges that we're facing in province in terms of the unaudited financial year-end position, where we literally started the year with more than 12 billion rands worth of outstanding payments to service providers. Coupled with this, health and education have also under budgeted for salaries, and that's amounting to about another 3.5 billion. So the fiscus is under significant pressure, and we know that as much as the equitable share has shifted in our favour, it's certainly going to create, it's certainly not going to assist us in that regard. We also know that the financial recovery plan will take time before we see a significant change in terms of opening up and freeing up funding. And so we just wanted to put that context in. As I said as well, the MEC really does apologise for not being here. We've actually got cabinet at 9 o'clock, and it's unusual to have it in Mayville, but it is in Mayville, and I will also at some point have to leave because I'm presenting at cabinet. However, what the team have put together here, and they will go through it slowly, and I must apologise for it being late. We were only able to brief the MEC yesterday, and he asked for some changes, so I do apologise. We did have it ready more than a week ago. So the team have really gone into a lot of detail, taking some historical context to the legislature and the funding that has been provided over the last few years. And I think it's an important context to provide. They also go into some detail in terms of possible areas that you could be focusing on, as well as just the budget process that you need to be aware of as the oversight of the legislature, ensuring that you give the input at the respective points of the budget process. So, Chair, if you'll allow me, I'll then hand over to Joanne, who is the budget analyst, and she's got in-depth knowledge in terms of legislation. But the rest of the team are here as well for the discussions and the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, honourable members. My name is Joanne Duboahin. I'll just put my camera on so that you can see that I'm a real person. Are you able to see me?
Very small, but we're sure you're a real person.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Okay, I will be presenting the detailed presentation on how the legislature budget is compiled. The first slide will look at the presentation outline, where I will go through the overview. Also, I will look at the additional funds received from 2009 and 2010 to 2017, 2027-28. I'll also look at the previous budget cuts that were effected against the legislature's budget from the year 2011, 2012 to 2027-28. I'll also show you the comparison of the provincial legislature's budget that we undertook. I'll also take you through the budget process. I'll also touch on how the legislature budget is compiled and how the legislature budget can be improved in order to meet its mandate. I'll also look at the legislature funding requests in 2020-25-26 and also over the 2026-27 MTF. And lastly, I'll also look at the additional funding that is already in the legislature's baseline. In terms of the overview, the legislature budget has undergone a thorough review twice. Can you please move to the next slide? Thank you. So, Provincial Treasurer undertook a zero-based budget twice for the legislature, and the exercise were undertaken in line of the following resolutions. The first one was Resolution 12 of 2008 of the Finance and Economic Development Portfolio Committee. That required provincial legislature, assisted by the Provincial Treasury, to undertake a comprehensive zero-based budget with the aim of correcting the 2008-2009 baseline of the legislature. The second zero-based budget exercise was undertaken in 2016-2017 financial year, and it was based on Resolution 4 of 2015. And it was because of the budget allocation taken by STACOV indicated that the KZN legislature has prepared a zero-based budget to highlight its additional funding requirements in respect of its operational budget. Next slide, please. If we look at the 2008 zero-based budget that was undertaken, the conclusion was that the legislature request for additional funding on an ad hoc and piecemeal basis was not conducive to good budgeting. Also, there were some anomalies in the budget statement of the nine. There were some anomalies in the budget statement of the 9 legislatures. However, it was also considered that the analysis that was presented to the legislature was a fair comparison of budget of the 9 provinces. The other issue that arose from the 2008 zero-based budget was that the exercise was that the exercise concluded that further work was still required to determine appropriate cost drivers of the legislature that must be determined. That should form part of the legislature's baseline. So in that case, they were looking at distinguishing these cost drivers from those that may be characterized as nice to haves. The 2015 zero-based budget exercise also concluded that the baseline of the KZN legislature's operational budget be increased, and in that regard, the budget was increased by 30.5 million, 32.063 million, and 32.923 million as an additional funding. It was further recommended that additional once-off funding of 11 million be allocated to the legislature. Can please move to the next slide. That gives you a summary of all the additional some of the additional funding that was allocated in the 2009-10 MTF period, resulting from the zero-based budget exercise. In that table 2.1, you will see that the legislature was allocated 25.230 million in 2009-10 financial year, 26,542 in 2010-2011, and 27.789 million in 2011-2012 financial year. The next table also shows that after the 2016-17 zero-based budget exercise, the legislature was allocated 30.536 million in 2016-17. Next slide, please. 2017-18 was allocated 32.063, and in 2018-19, the legislature was allocated 32.923 million. So those are the amount that we received from the 2 zero-based exercises that were undertaken for the legislature. So in terms of the Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, which was applicable for the legislature from 1 April 2015, the legislature is not required to submit additional funding requests to Provincial Treasury, like all other departments, as we do during the MTEC budget process. But instead, the legislature budget requirement should be determined at meetings held by the Speaker and also the MEC for Finance. And usually the first engagement occurs in July, the second engagement occurs in October, and then the third engagement usually occurs in January. Next slide, please. With the next 2 slides also will show you the exercise that we did to show all the additional funding that the legislature received after the 2008 budget review process for the legislature. And it also shows the various budget cut that has been effected from the 2011 financial year. So the legislature has seen a substantial increase from the various budget allocations from 2009-2010 zero-based budget exercise, showing an increase from 72.821 million in 2009-2010 to about 566 million in 2017-2018. Please note that with all the additional funding that were allocated to the legislature, all the amounts that remain within your baseline was increased by 4.5%. That's the assumption that we took. As over the years, we didn't have, we took the average percentage growth. So we decided to use 4.5% as a fair assumption for the increases over the MTF. Also, over the 2005-2006 MTF, the growth from the additions that has been made from the 2009-2010 MTF period is 522.852 million, 546.402 million, and 566.495 million, respectively. Please note that this is cumulative over the years. On the other hand, if you can please move to the next slide. You can see also the budget cut that has been implemented on the legislature's budget from the 2011-12 financial year up until 2027-28 financial year. The amounts are also cumulative, and you will see that from 2011-2012, the budget cut was 5.197 million, and that increased to 190.610 million in 2027-28. However, if you look at the overall total, I've also calculated the net total. You can see that the legislature budget actually shows a positive increase over the year and over the years and the review, despite all the budget cuts that have been implemented. And also there was an undertaking that the legislature budget will not be affected by any, or will be exempted by any budget cut by any future budget cuts. And also it should be noted that the legislature budget was not impacted by the 2024-2025 MTF budget cuts. I'll move on to the other slides that shows you the comparison of the provincial legislature's budget. So what we did here was to compare the KZN legislature's budget to all the other 9 provinces in the country. And from there, you can see that the legislature's budget is actually the second highest against all the other provinces, with the exception of Gauteng, that was higher than the KZN, but only up to 2026-27 financial year. In 2027-28 financial year, we can see that the legislature's budget actually exceeds Gauteng, and they all have 80 members. So, and we exceed them by 17.092 million, which is a great improvement. Moving on to the budget process. So here I'm just going to briefly highlight what we do during the budget process and the purpose of the budget process. So the purpose of the budget process is to allow government to prepare the expenditure estimate in the context of enhancing service delivery and ensuring value for money. We also look to revise its policy priorities, the macroeconomic framework, and also look at the resource envelope that is available. We also evaluate departmental and public entities' plans in line with the national outcomes, provincial priorities, and also the objectives of the PGDP. We involve various role players that provide political and technical advice when faced with trade-offs between competing spending priorities. We also focus on changing the structure of the economy from a resource extraction economy to a more production-led economy that can create employment opportunities for the people of KZN. We also focus on fiscal prudence by way of cost cutting, as per the latest instruction notes issued by Provincial Treasury, ensuring that enhanced service delivery as well as value for money is achieved. We also compiled a reprioritized budget with the focus on the outcome of the budget or spending reviews that we currently are undertaking, that is aligned with the national outcomes as well as provincial priorities. Note that this approach builds on previous year's budget reforms. We also obtained the required authority through the voting process from the provincial legislature to spend. Moving on to how the legislature's budget is compiled. So every year, the KZN Provincial Treasury will issue a Treasury guideline document to all departments and also to all public entities, and this facilitates the preparation of the MTF budget submission. The provincial legislature is also invited to attend the annual workshop that we undertake. And while we acknowledge that the budget process for the legislature follows the formula, we also try to involve them
during this annual budget process, because it's also a information sharing sessions where we can all share best practices. So this document then, which is the Treasury Guideline document, is a tool for provincial government and public entities to implement budget reforms. Provincial Treasury also continues to conduct critical reassessment of existing expenditures of departments and public entities, including the legislature, and also policies upon which they are based on the principles of efficiency, effectiveness, and affordability. Provincial Treasury is using the budget or spending reviews in determining the 2026-27 MTF budget, which is a shift from how budget were assessed in prior years. The primary focus is to re-examine the budget baseline of all department and public entities. We also take into account expenditure levels of the prior year. We also look at the fixed and variable cost, and we also identify discretionary funding, as well as identify fixed costs that needs to be revised or renegotiated downwards or otherwise terminated. This then will help to adopt budget reforms, has a tool to identify, clarify, weigh, and mark relevant expenditures in the provincial government system. With the legislature specifically, what we usually do as Provincial Treasury is the legislature will receive the annual MTF database like all other provincial department and public entities, and this database is issued to the province annually by National Treasury. The legislature then completes the database and, where possible, undertakes reprioritization and submit the first draft to the Provincial Treasury. This is usually in July or August, depending on the timetable by National Treasury. In the first draft, National Treasury would have not shared allocation letters for the MTF with provinces, as this usually happens after the Minister of Finance has tabled the MTBPS in October every year. As a result, in the first draft, no additional funding is usually allocated to department or public entities, including the legislature. The database has a built-in formula in the outer year of the MTF to grow the outer year's budget by a percentage determined by National Treasury. So, for instance, for the 2026-27 MTF, the outer year of 2028-29 increases by 4.5%, and that establishes the baseline for that year. And that is the carry-through allocations of the outer year, that is 2028-29, and are based on the incremental percentage used. This is a standard for all departments and the provincial legislature. Provincial Treasury also compiles the MTEC report based on the first draft database, and this aims to provide a detailed analysis of the legislature budget. We facilitate an ongoing discussion between us and the legislature regarding their budget, and the figures are thoroughly analyzed, and suggestions or comments are also made for the legislature to consider. The legislature also presents the first draft budget to STACOV. The second draft is usually due in the first week of November, and by then the National Treasury would have issued the first allocation letters to provinces. So as soon as we received the allocation letter from National Treasury, we also issued the allocation letters to the legislature, the departments, and public entities. And if there are funds available, the legislature is allocated funds as far as possible, and also taking into account the funding requests made by the legislature. These additional allocations are brought into the second draft database. All funding requests are discussed with the Ministers' Committee on the Budget, which is the MINCOMBAT, and it's also presented to the Provincial Executive Council on the funding needs of the province, noting that the request for additional funding usually significantly outweighs the amount that has become available for allocation. The third draft database is due in the second week of January, and by then the province would have received the final allocation from the National Treasury, and we would have issued additional allocation letters to the legislature, department, and entities where necessary. The third draft database is the final draft, and the legislature is given the opportunity to review the figures based on the allocation received, and also to undertake further reprioritization if necessary. The final stage is the drafting of the EPRE chapter for the legislature, and in that process, we do have a lengthy engagement with the legislature for areas of improvements. And then this concludes how the legislature's budget is compiled. The next slide will talk to you about how the legislature's budget can be improved in order to meet the mandate of the legislature, which is oversight, lawmaking, and public participation. And the following are some of the suggestions we are presenting to the committee today. A continued implementation of the KZN provincial cost-cutting measures, as this may free up some resources which can be allocated to priority service delivery area. Some of the shared lessons learned from the financial recovery plan is cost of events. So if you can review the cost of event, we might be able to save some money from that area. The automation of business processes to improve operational inefficiency. This would include reducing printing and paper-based with paperless environment, and this will apply to tabling of documents to become electronic. The IT strategy to include consideration of cloud infrastructure utilization like Dube Tradeport, which is cost effective. We also suggest that the legislature looks into assessment of the productivity of its existing administrative staff to find areas of improved efficiencies. We also suggest that there should be a review of various policies that may result in substantial savings, including overtime policy, leave encashment policy, cell phone policy, landline policy. And for example, we were suggesting that the private calls do not exceed 30 rand per month. Any private calls exceeding 30 rand per month should be paid. The balance should be paid by the relevant officials. In addition to the above, it is also urged that the legislature use the forums available to them at a national level to investigate the possibility of the top slicing of the budget allocations of provincial legislatures in the future budget processes. Next slide, please. Here, what we wanted to show, the additional funding requests proposed by the legislature for 2025-26 financial year, or in the adjustment period, and also 2026-27 MTF. So some of the requests that the legislature has proposed is 15.778 million that they require for the operational compensation of employees' cost, and this resulted from the 4.8% increase in the 2025 wage agreement that was not budgeted for during the budget process by the legislature, as they indicated that there was no room for reprioritization within its budget. So this allocation is being requested for the 2025-26 adjustment estimate. Also, this has a carry-through over the 2026-27 MTF, and the legislature is requesting 20.227 million, 21.441 million, and 22.727 million over the 2026-27 MTF period. The legislature is also requesting 15 million for a once-off computer services cost for a server that it requires in 2025-26. There's also 1.5 million for a communication solution in 2025-26, and this also has carried through. 950,000 for a help desk solution in 2025-26 with carried through cost. There's also a once-off 20 million replacement of the main chamber audiovisual system in 2025-26. Please note that all the additional funding requests for 2025-26, the legislature is aiming to be allocated in the 2025-26 adjustment estimate. And then over the MTF, the 2026-27 MTF, the legislature is requesting 23.525 million, 24.937 million, and 26.433 million for the filling of vacant posts. Also, a total of 9.13 million in 2026-27 will carry through costs for the following: 1.270 million for the LGBTQIA+, 581,000 for the Sex Workers Symposium, 1.750 million for the Young Women Symposium, and also the 5.540 million for the CPA African and International Program, the National Conference of State Legislatures Program, and also for Society of Clerks at the Table programs. The last slide, Chair, talks about the additional funding that is already in the legislature budget. So if you look at the 2026-27 database that we received from National, there is an inbuilt formula that frees up 42 million in the 2028-29 baseline for the legislature, and this results from the 4.5% baseline increase for all departments and public entities, including the legislature. There's also 1.316 million in the 2028-29 baseline, and this relates to the revenue budget of the legislature. The legislature will also be allocated funding towards in the 2025-26 adjustment estimate, and this relates to the 2.091 million revenue over collection from the 2024-25 budget. There's also 21.556 million from the 2024-25 operational budget underspending. There's also that 20.72 million from the 2023-24 unauthorized overspending. So these allocations will be allocated to the legislature in the 2025-26 adjustment estimate. So in total, if we look at the budget that is available already in the legislature's budget, we're looking at a total of 87.691 million will be added to the legislature's budget. And Chair, this concludes my presentation. And can I please state that if there are any questions, my HOD and senior management will be here to take questions. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. I think it is quite eye-opening to see how the process happens and how it unfolds. There is a few aspects before I hand it over to the members, and I will implore members to ask questions because there's constant complaint about the budget allocation for the legislator and the importance of the work that we do here. So putting forward your questions, please take the following into your into your questions, and that is that we have a system, a centralized system. That means our equitable share is given to us with a similar process as this one from the national fiscus, the national treasury. Thereafter, this process will take place in which several different departments will be allocated monies according to their needs. Maybe on this issue for the future, that is where it becomes relevant, because the argument might be that some entity, the rugby entity, to use an example, is receiving too much money and it should be allocated to the legislator. It is also very important to note that by 27-28, KZN will be the highest province with the highest budget. So that is already telling us that we have a high budget already, and we're moving up to even more, even not more than Gauteng. Not that that is wrong, that is definitely not wrong. So I will hand it then, and just then this one aspect, it's also interesting to see that the net budget has, over all the years, notwithstanding the cuts, has actually increased. So if we take all of that into consideration, I implore members to please engage with Treasury so that we understand exactly how the allocation takes place and what can be done to alleviate the pressures. Honourable members. Okay, I see that on the virtual platform, the speaker's hand is up. Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and the committee. I want to refer Firstly, I know that it's time for questions, but I thought that there are areas that would also need us to explain prior to members asking. When you go to slide 17, I am sure even Nopala would have to come to that in response to questions. I want to acknowledge the spreading that was done. I think it was in slide 15 to 16. And firstly, yes, it's true that now KwaZulu-Natal is at equal with the Gauteng legislature. Now, probably, we're number 2. But if you consider that this was their first financial year where they were having the same number of members, I thought then it should make some contribution. I mean, it would make some effect in understanding context, because KwaZulu-Natal legislature has had 80 members, and in terms of geography and the space coverage, total different to Gauteng. And that was one of the points that we have been in our engagements, even with previous MECs, making a point of on how the finances have a different effect, considering those two aspects. Last year, after the elections, then Gauteng became to be the same size as KwaZulu-Natal in terms of members, but also still in terms of the rest, there wasn't real improvement on our side. But we want to acknowledge that is the case. Coming to what is also raised as issues that must be considered, I am not sure whether, not in a bad way, but if Honorable MEC was here, because he understands it, I am sure he understands it. I am not sure whether Treasury did read what we have been doing in terms of cost-cutting measures in the previous term, including in this, because when they are alluding to the fact that to repurpose some administrative staff, it's exactly what we are currently doing. And we have reported, and I want record to have said that we started with certain units. I am sure and aware that they know that we are with Hansard, and they, including non-filling of those posts that require to that. That's what they say we must do for the benefit of the meeting. We have been doing it and we still do it. The other aspect that they speak to, the issue of printing and reducing printing and everything, just to say, I mean, moving to paperless. I want to say that we did that. Ubabu Kwala has even made mention of it, because since 2020, when it was compelled by the COVID-19, but it was a decision that was taken at the beginning of the 6th term that we are moving to paperless environment, and we're doing it. But there is a disconnect when they call public participation in our events, because those are oversight platforms. It's unlike when government from the side of the executive would be going out to say, we have built these houses in Omcimbi here. But public participation, when you go through the legislative oversight tools, you see public participation platforms. The ones that we are having are not events. They are tools, oversight tools. They are, in the parliamentary language, Honorable Chair, categorized as part of House debates, in the same category of House debates, of portfolio committee. All of those are tools of oversight, not events. I wanted to clarify that. But also coming to some of the events, probably like then when we are having the state of the province address, maybe if they want us to go to that part of the detail, that events to us are not the same as how they see events. Ours are tools of oversight, our public participation. There would be events which do not include the public participation mechanisms, which are tools of oversight. I thought I should first explain that, Chair, so that we bring it not on lingo that is illiterate to when it comes to both the parliamentarism as a sphere, but also both on the basis of our literature Whether you go through the Eskin May and others, there is a difference. And I am glad, Chair, to say this in his absence. I am very glad. I know that the MEC knows the difference between the two. Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify that so that members can ask freely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I just want to add, because I think you put your finger on something quite important. If we look on how the budget can be improved through the document that was presented to us, it is the cost cutting, as you as referred to, and examples of cost cutting includes cost of events. One must understand that the existence of the legislator is oversight, and it is a constitutional mandate and imperative for us to do that public participation. And for us to do that, which is mandated and is a burden placed on us by the Constitution, we need to go out there and have events where we will interact with the with the members of public. If we don't do that, we fail in our duty, and that can have serious consequences. It has consequences in our legislative processes. If an act is enacted and there is not proper public participation, then that law can be set aside by court. We know the Mogale case, that is the matter of the Khoisan and Traditionals Leader Act, where such public participation was not properly done, and it was actually set aside by the Constitutional Court. So it's important that we have enough money to actually deal with it. Okay, enough said. I see the...
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
When you were right, you sparked something that I had to remember, that we have even planned for an oversight of the future, which is about having specialized oversight where we supplement on this. But it's to add the fact that those are some of the considerations, but including, most importantly, what I request from Treasury at this level, that our parliamentary sessions, be it the symposium for interfaith and others, the public participation, be not characterized as events. It is not consistent with parliamentarism and also our own language used, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Magubani, I see you raised your hand. Please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll seem to greetings to all the honourable members, including the members that are online, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, the Chief Whip and the others. I may not count them all, but greetings to all of them and the staff. I'll seem to differ, Honourable Chair. One, when looking at the slide in the comparison of provincial legislatures' budget, let's talk the truth as it is. I don't see KZN being treated fairly. My reason why, we're talking about the difference of the budget that is will be allocated for 27-28, which will be slightly 17 million more than Gauteng. Okay, let's talk what is happening now. Gauteng has got 1.2 billion as we speak. It might be the reason that their numbers has been added for this term, administrative term, but how do you then compare 300 million and 17 million? Because when you take the budget that they're having this financial year and then split it into the years until 2028, there are almost 60 million, 70 million more than us. And then we are having fixed plans that just needs a once off payment, and then we are done and dusted with those plans. the issue of changing the systems in the legislature, the issue of change changing the computer systems and all that. It's a once-off thing that we need to do, just once off. Then we are done and dusted with those things. And then what can one then tell us the difference that needs to be done in Gauteng that allows them to be given 300 million more than us, and then what we need at this moment? When I remember, we only needed almost like 90 million, 200 million to fix all our issues. We just needed 100 million to fix our issues, but we couldn't be given that. Then what justifies then Gauteng to be given 300 million? We can then not take that 17 million that will be extra in 2028 and say this, we will get an increase. That's not an increase. It will be still a problem by that time to us. So I'll differ on that one. Yeah. So if then speaker, they do have a forum, speakers forum, I'm not sure if she's the one who can be able to answer to that. What justification do they give when they're going to give Gauteng so much money and then they don't give it to us, but we've got the same seats with them? It doesn't matter that they only changed on this administrative term, but what justifies the 300 million more than us? If we can get an answer on that. Secondly, so that a person maybe can be familiar on how the budgets are being processed or being submitted and all those processes, I'll plead that we be part of the workshops that were mentioned on the report. The MTF and the budget submissions workshop, so that we can familiarize ourselves. Then we do also have an input so that we can also have a clear picture, because maybe we just sometimes look at the reports and then we don't have the inner details. But then if we can be part of the workshops, then maybe we will understand what causes these issues. What causes these budget cuts? Because if then Treasurer will also recommend that we put much more budget cuts on phone calls, and I don't see what impact does it have on the cuts that we are having? What cost does it have on the cuts that we are having? Have we compared? Maybe, because I don't see us cutting more than what we have, the legislature have cut it now. Because there are some already programs that are measures of the legislature that has been already cut. Then what more do we need to do as the legislature? There are more special programs, important programs that has been taken off the plans of the legislature. But then, does it justify the cuts? I know cost-cutting measures needs to be implemented, but till what rate? We cannot go as far as I think we have went, according to my understanding. And then lastly, I think I've touched on the comparisons and all that. And then I saw that also the treasurer has mentioned that when they adding the unauthorized expenditures and all that, our amount that has been added seemingly to be 87 million. I don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that. Already the other one, 20.7 million, is referred to 2023, 2024 unauthorized overspending. So how can you count it as additionals? It's still there as unauthorized. It's just for a matter of accounting and calculations, but it's not reality what we're going to receive. It's just the matters of accounting. I think I'll end there, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Magubane. I think there is some hands, but what I'm going to suggest is that we get an answer from Treasury on each member after you've asked the question, because it is fresh in our memory exactly what you've asked now. Some of them is practical. It is how much do we cut until we cut our own throat? I think that's what you basically are asking, and other issues. So Treasury, will you be able to answer the questions now?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I will attempt to answer some of them.
My hand was still raised.
Sorry, Chair.
The chairperson, it's Imran Kika. My hand remains raised. Do you want to take my questions now after Treasury's response?
No, I will, as I said, I'll do it one by one.
Fine.
So the answer will be now. We'll get to you, Honourable
Okay.
Kika, don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I will respond to some of the questions and invite my team to make other comments. I think on the first point to make around cost cutting is, as a province, given the financial constraints that we are facing and the limited resources, I think it's an issue around a principle and a conscious mindset that we are trying to instill. I agree that it may not have significant material impact on savings and on redirecting those savings to your key programs, but it's a culture shift that we are promoting as KZN, and I think in that spirit, that's the spirit that we are looking at. We do acknowledge the work that was done by the legislature in terms of the various areas they've looked at, and just also then in terms of obviously, yes, the wording was incorrect, and we, in terms of events, we certainly do agree that they are public participation. But our question is, are we, when we have those, are we aware of the full costs of those events? This includes not just the logistic costs, but remember, with the participation of government officials, the S&T for the 2 days, all of those need to be taken into consideration when we establish these events. Well, sorry, these public participation engagements. If we look at some of the larger participation, are we doing those most cost effectively? I think that's where we're coming from. We're not saying that they should not be having the engagements. We understand it's your mandate, but we're saying, are they being done in the most cost effective way? For example, if we are going to, and I know the legislature is really good in terms of using community halls, but do we need to decorate the hall, as an example? So we're just saying we are in a very difficult situation, and these are the kind of things that we are encouraging. We'll even be going to Cabinet in the next sitting and making certain suggestions around our engagements that we have with communities and how we do those going forward. So it's really about a consciousness, I think, we're looking at. Then, obviously, as we know, the equitable share that's allocated to the province, there is a process that is undertaken in terms of how it is allocated to all the departments. So all the departments, including the legislature, will put forward their request for additional funding. As Treasury, we don't make the decisions. We take those requests to the Ministers' Committee on Budget, and those decisions are then taken there, recommended to Cabinet, and that's the process. So obviously we do take we don't edit the requests from departments. We take them as they are. So the legislature's requirement goes as it is, and obviously then one needs to look at the priorities of the province. And given the limited amounts that are there, that decision is based on the critical service delivery and where the greatest impact would be. But we can share that, and I think in terms of the workshop, we would rather have perhaps another session with the committee to take them through the budget. The workshop that we have is a very technical workshop. It's about how they complete the Excel spreadsheets. It includes all the administrative teams, the CFOs. So I think in terms of the memberships, just in terms of learnings, we can certainly have a separate session with them in that regard. Why Gauteng has got how they allocate their budgets, that obviously also, as I said, they follow the same process based on their financial position. They could then possibly be able to consider that, but we can't answer why there's a once-off amount in Gauteng. I think maybe the committee can engage them in that regard. I think then also on the once-off costs, we have, as you saw in the presentation, there were allocations made in those regards, particularly I think it was the SAP implementation and the follow-through costs. And I agree with the member, the funds that were made available for the unauthorized expenditure, yes, it is merely just dealing with the overdraft that you would have been in had you not underspent last year. But Chair, I think those are just some of the initial responses. If you'll allow the rest of my team to respond if they have any inputs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I also want to respond because there was a question asked directed at me.
Thank you, Speaker, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say to Honorable Makubane, honestly, you forced my hand, my colleague, to respond to this. I had that, and I chose not to respond because I took it as an insult. I took it as an insult, Chair. What was raised that the legislature must use national platforms to do this. I had thought I will not, but because it is now further asked by an honorable member, and my duty says I must respond. The reason I say, Chair, I take it as an insult is because we said in addition to what we are raising at the national level, the Treasury must also raise this. We said that in the policy statement of Vote 2. It's a call that we have been making to MECs in the past, that they also add their voice. It was never meant administratively, but I think how it is raised administratively. We are saying that because, Chair, at a national level, we have embarked on a process that even ended up at the level of the President of the Republic in the previous term, President Cyril Ramaphosa, that had directed, Chair, that we will have a meeting with the then Minister of Finance and then Minister of Public Service and Administration. It was Minister Mkhunu and Minister Mboweni. From that engagement, Chair, we were directed to provinces because Minister Nkwinti at the time had attended, Minister Mboweni at the time attended to those that related to the parliament. The baseline at the level of the National Assembly Parliament, it was addressed in that financial year. I don't know whether it predates the arrival of the person in Treasury that was writing these slides and presenting to be presented here, or it escaped their memory. We have said it even to the MEC. Gauteng benefited through that process. KwaZulu-Natal Treasury did not budge. In fact, Chair, it happened at the level of administration. It did not even have to go back to that level because at the level of administration, it gets ridiculed. And we get to be taught things that are not consistent with the sector that we are in. The administration would come and make presentations and it's only when we meet with MECs that there are concessions, Chair. We ended up, Chair, doing something that was very unfortunate. I hear that they say they have a decision. We had to, I don't want to say it in a polite way, but it was something that was unconstitutional and unfortunate. We have to crash in the meeting that they were presenting budget, a space that is for them to get to a point where the MEC of the time and the then treasurer, which was continued by Honorable Rogers, had to stop commit to stop cutting from the legislature. Because these platforms were not assisting us, we had to go to that particular level. And we presented our case and left. We did not entertain discussions, Chair. And we told them that we can't sit with them and do the discussion. We want to make presentations so that at least when they take decisions in concerning the legislature, they take educated decisions. Not treat us like a department, we're not. In that very same venture, the HOD today comes back and say this public participation must be asking us about decoration. I am an executive authority and I understand Nerusha to be an accounting authority where we speak about decoration. And without even checking the line item for decoration that they're speaking of, they are not acknowledging the real cutting that we have done. TLTP, Chair, used to be 2 days full The parliament sessions used to be 2 days full. They used to have 1,500 as minimums and went up. We've cut down to 500. 500. But we're still told this. We're told about decorations and stuff. We're told about further cutting. It's cutting to the bone that they wanted. And every time when they raise this, I sometimes think that maybe public servants still think that it's the time, if there was such a time, where they had public representatives that did not understand public finance. It's no longer that time, Chair. If they haven't picked up that we understand public finance, I think they need to pick up on that, Chair. They shouldn't come and insult us, insult the legislature administration, and insult us. Maybe in my absence, they can insult them, not when we are there, Chair. They are not speaking about the fact that head of departments in this province and elsewhere are even having drivers and staff, something that we don't have for our administration. But because they want to go to make us ineffective, I refuse, Chair. I further refuse workshop on budgeting for legislature done by Treasury. They have written, and I've turned down that. The chair of the committee has a right to go through the budget committee and the budget office of Parliament, the National Assembly, because we are in one sector governed by the same principles and understand funding for legislatures in terms of our own sector. I will refuse it, Chair. And I'm not advising the committee to go and be educated by the very same people who do not understand our sector. Come here and insult us, Chair. I thought that I must really make that a point that must be driven home. The MTF and everything that is done and how it is done. The budget office is a structure that the chair can speak to. And the budget office is also concerned with understanding oversight and making ways of advancing oversight, not to curb oversight, not to make us domesticated, oversee me in the way that we see, so that we do not comply with our own targets and the sector will remain in perpetual underperformance. I wanted to clarify it, Chair. I am sorry it might have seemed as if I'm a bit emotional. Because I subscribe to the fact that if something you are committed to do, you can't do it being detached to. I am not detached to oversight, and yes, it resides very well within me when it comes to oversight in terms of my emotions, because without oversight, roads will be like how we see them. The municipalities will be like how we see them once you try and domesticate oversight. Once you underfund oversight further and come and say you have funded it, when Honorable Makuban has clarified what has been done. It's not, Chair. But we must not be insulted in the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just before I go, I've got everybody's hands, honourable members. I've got it noted down, so I'll give you an opportunity. But I just want to give opportunity to the Treasury to also proceed. Carol has already spoken. I think she referred to other members of a team that might also want an opportunity to answer. Is there nobody? Okay, so let's then go to Honourable CQ Madlopa. She's been putting up her hand very vigilantly.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Greetings again to our speaker. We want to welcome the presentation by Treasury. I'm talking with an understanding that they are still owing us a meeting, that we have to meet with them and raise our concern. But I think as a committee, it is good also because Treasury is here, although the MEC is not here, to raise the issues that we think it's hindering our work as a legislature. Honorable Chair, I can see, I know that some of the issues here are the issues that must be responded by the National Treasury. But at the same time, our ambassador to the National Treasurer is our own treasurer in the province. That when we raise issues, we think that they will take it to the upper structure where they are sitting. Firstly, we want to appreciate that in our cry, even in our debates that we raise on the issue of cutting, budget of the legislature, the Treasury listened a little bit, because in 2024, 2025, there was no cuts. So we have to acknowledge that and appreciate, Chair. Having said that, Chair, even the comparison that we are being given here with the Gauteng province and ourselves, Chair, I think we are not the same. When you look at the programs that we are doing as a legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, most of the provinces are coming here to learn, because they have never reached where we are as a province. Secondly, we are not the same. If you look at the vastness of our province, we have got 11 districts in our province as compared to Gauteng. And I don't know why, as a province, we can be under-resourced and then we are compared. I think the Honorable Makubane has advanced also the issue that Gauteng has never had 80 members like we have, and the Speaker did talk to that. It's only now, but they have been, getting more budget than KwaZulu-Natal province. I think we must also raise it to Treasury to say that I know that Honorable Speaker has been raising these things in the forum where they are sitting. And we also appeal to the Treasury that the challenges we are having, because the issue of cutting now, I don't know where to cut. If Treasury say we must look and cut, I think it means to say we'll cut the whole legislature and go out and leave and not working, if we are still going to cut. My challenge, Honorable Chair, is that the mandate of us that is enshrined in the Constitution, we have to make laws. Making laws is not an easy thing, because even the budget itself is a law, because we go and consult in regard to budget. I remember that in the National Assembly, there was a court outcome that said that all the members were guilty as the department. That was because they failed to play oversight. In KwaZulu-Natal, there is no effective oversight that we are doing as members. We oversight on billions of rands for different departments. But now we can't oversight those. Anything that goes wrong, they said we'll be sleeping. We are not sleeping. It's because we are not giving a budget to do our work that is enshrined in the Constitution. The public hearings, the Speaker talked to that. Public hearings are also an oversight, because we want to test whether the residents are happy with the services they get from government, and also come back and talk to the government to say these are wrong things that are happening in our constituencies, in the communities. So I don't think really this budget that we are being given, we can appreciate that now in 2027, 2028, we will be better, but it's not being better. It's better than before, but it's not really meeting the requirements of the budget that we use to utilize. Sometimes we fight with the speakers as members. when we want to go and do oversight, and then they said, no, you are not allowed to go there. And we fight with them, we take it personal with them. And we are just, killing the messenger, because they are told, even now in this meeting, they are told to cut. I don't know what is it they are going to cut, really. And I think this thing, to those that will be having platform to discuss the budget of the legislatures, I think it must be included in the constitution, not to come from the department to see. And I think the chair, you did raise to say, we want to know how they prioritize, when they give other departments, in the expense of the legislature, that is oversighting all these departments, but they get peanuts when it comes to a budget. I don't think it's something that is good. And I think it's something that we must raise when we are having a meeting with the MEC and Treasury. The concern that we are having, and also because you'll find that they give the departments, those departments, they don't spend money,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it comes to us as legislature, you fail to oversight. How come that they did not expand? It means that we are not following, What can we do? And I think the speaker have made an example of 1,500 to 500. Those cuts, cutting from 1,500 to it's 1/3. That now we are having. Even the meetings are cut. We are not meeting all the time. And they have tried to cut to say visual, this meeting, and some visual things are not effective, when we are discussing and things is cut off and so on. Maybe one will request that, I think as a honorable chair, we must list all the things because the members are raising it. And the speaker, it's painful to lead an institution and you don't have a budget, because all the failures that will be in that institution will push into you as a leader, like you, Chair. If you are not making oversight and you are a chair here, we say, why we are not making an oversight, you are a chair, forgetting that it's not within your means to really assist us as members. So we request that we must raise this thing. I think this meeting must be urgent, Chair. It must not be postponed. We know today that the MEC is having a valid reason and so on. But really, we need to urgently have a meeting and raise this thing, because there is no way that we can be elected to play an oversight, to make laws, and all of a sudden we are not doing that because of the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Madlopa. Just to add, there's nothing to cut more, it sounds. That's what you're saying, number one. Number two, there is allocations and there's many departments that underexpend. Why can't we have that money? We can't expend, why can't it come to the legislator? We'll spend it. But as I decided, let's get an answer after every member put forward. Yours was more a statement, but if Treasury wants to respond, now's your opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's not too much I can add. I think we've noted the inputs of the members, and I agree it should be a discussion with the MEC. At the end of the day, we only have a budget of X amount, and we can only allocate it based on the recommendations of the Ministerial Committee on Budget. There are a number of constitutional mandates that have to be fulfilled, and ultimately it becomes a decision between whether the funds go where they go, whether it goes to health and education that are grossly underfunded, or whether it goes to the oversight structure. And those are ultimately the decisions that need to be taken. We do not take them as administrators. It gets taken at a political level. So I would agree that that discussion needs to happen with the MEC. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Honourable Magubane, I've seen you've raised your hand, but there is some members that's been waiting along. I'll give you an opportunity. Honourable Kika, your questions?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone. I think there's not many questions in here. A lot has been said by the members. I think I've been covered in terms of the budget process as we always are, with regards to how the allocations of funds take place. So that was basically the presentation of Treasury. I think there is an adjustment budget process versus our needs, and there lies a bit of a gap in terms of what are we looking at as we are going into that period where the adjustment budget will be looked at versus the needs of the legislature. So, for example, we have the need to redo or install a voting system, for example, in the House. I'm just using it as an example. It doesn't mean that it is the exact thing. However, how will this be taken into account going into the adjustment process, if at all? Then, coming back to the allocation of funding to the legislature, there is the process that should be undertaken, including the Speaker of the National Assembly, given that Treasury itself does not have, and this is a view that Treasury can probably clarify, the monopoly, if I can put it that way, and I'm not saying it is, but the large involvement of Treasury with regards to the allocation here versus what FAMPLA allows. So if there can be some comment on that. Member costs still remain something that is a significant driver, and that includes the cost of officials and basically in the area of S&T. However, I think that has been addressed to some extent. There has been a very clear distinction made, particularly by the Speaker, regarding the distinction between events versus oversight. And then I was quite shocked to hear that we decorate halls, because as far as I know, we use our own banners, for example, so that was a little bit unsettling. But anyway, be that as it may, there may be events that I didn't attend and didn't see what was decorated, or maybe it's something that we need to look at, because we have already cut down everything to the bare bones. As far as my experience goes, having looked at things over the number of years and over the number of legislatures that have passed, and we have cut down to the bare bones, and so that is a bit of a concern, that particular item. I think the Speaker has covered all of these largely in her remarks. However, the one thing that pops up in terms of oversight is the operations of committees as well, and where committees are hamstrung because of budgetary allocations. The committees, as this committee is, are the engine rooms of the legislature, is where accountability takes place. And when committees can't function as they should and go out and see what they should and hold the executive to account as it should, then the problem that we have is that oversight is completely diluted, and oversight remains significantly problematic. And as other members raise, including the executive authority of the legislature, we need to then question how effective is our oversight. And then, in as much as we question expenditure of the legislature, we need to question the allocation to the legislature to actually perform its duties. So that is just the summary of what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Kiko. I'll hand it over to the Treasury officials if there is any answer to what you stated. Just adding to what you've stated is the fact that if there's a shortage of money, the need of oversight actually is higher. So it is a double whammy if you don't have money and because of that you can't do proper oversight. It means there will be more unlawful expenditure, wasteful expenditure, irregular, and so forth. Treasury?
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't respond to everything, because obviously, again, it's critical notes that we are taking for the future engagements with the MEC, but perhaps just explain the adjustment process. So now that the audits have been concluded, there are one or two that have not been finalized. That would be Ezimvela and Itala. But in terms of the departments, that has been concluded. We are now in a position to assess the financial position of the province, because if there is money that has not been spent, it then becomes available in the adjustment estimate process. However, as we know, the province ended in a net negative position of over 100 million rand, and therefore there is no funding to then appropriate in that regard. Whilst there were some departments that did underspend and they've applied for rollovers, that would have to be considered in the process. So what then happens is, again, as Treasury, we compile all the requests from all the departments and the legislature. We take that through to MinCombud, and we then indicate that this is the financial position. The only funds that are available is the contingency reserve. As the members would know, that was not allocated. There was another small amount that came from the equitable share allocation that was not allocated but held back. That would also be available for allocation based on the department's ability to absorb the 5.5% wage increase. So it follows the same process. It then goes through the Ministers' Committee on Budget. They make recommendations to Cabinet. Cabinet then approve, and it then comes to the House for adoption in the adjustment estimates. That process takes place in November. I think let me stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honourable Mbata.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to yourself, the Speaker, honourable members, and the Treasurer. Well, I'm covered by, firstly, Honourable Kobane and Honourable CQ. And the Treasurer will have to correct me if my reading of the presentation and my understanding of the process is wrong, because the figures show that the legislature cut will rise to 190 million by 27-28. But at the same time, the presentation acknowledges an undertaking to exempt the legislature from the 24-25 MTEF cuts and from the future reduction as far as possible. Can the Treasury confirm its commitment that the legislature, as I'll use the word watchdog over more than 100 billion in provincial spending, will be protected from cuts, so that oversight, lawmaking and public participation are never compromised? Because whatever that the Treasury is giving us, it tells you that these three things that I've mentioned will be compromised. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Mbata. Treasury, are you protecting us? Treasury, did you hear the question?
Yes. Sorry, Chair. Yes, I did. I was just struggling to unmute. Chair, as an administrative head, I can't make that commitment. That can only be made by the Cabinet. So again, it's something that would have to be engaged on by the MEC. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Honourable Magubane.
Follow up, Chairperson.
Okay.
Honourable Chair, thanks once again. It's not something much, but I just it's my wish to know from the MEC his inputs as our ambassador to the National Treasurer. His inputs or his motivations or recommendations towards the legislature budget of KZN, taking into consideration that when you look at Gauteng, because I've got an issue with that one, when you look at Gauteng versus KZN, our province is very vast, scattered, and it's not the same as Gauteng. Gauteng, they've got free means of moving. I've just learned just now that they don't even make accommodation bookings because they are all centered nearby the legislature or wherever they're supposed to meet. So they've got costs that are really out of their way. They don't need to accommodate Makubane who leave Newcastle and come to the legislature or wherever the program is going to be. They don't have those issues. They don't have issues that they will take a member from Kanyagut and bring that member to the legislature in Pietermaritzburg and drive those almost 600 kilometers. coming and going back, that's 1,200 kilometers. So taking into consideration all those tasks that our legislature is facing compared to Gauteng, what justifies their number for the mere fact that they were even lesser before? What justifies that number? And then what is our MEC is saying as our ambassador in looking at those numbers and the fairness with the National Treasurer? If one must then know, maybe see the minutes as to what is it exactly being spoken about us when they are meeting as a MEC of Finance from all the provinces. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Makubani. Yes, as was said by Treasury officials, we will have to do our own comparison of the budget in Gauteng and here to establish why certain items is different. But in a practical sense, you're 100% correct. Just on a geographical and vastness of the province, there's a big difference. We have invited the MEC, but unfortunately, the slot that was allocated to us falls on a Wednesday, which is a difficult issue. We will once again try and arrange a date that is suitable to everybody, so that we can have him, because it's important what you say. Then I think the Secretary also wants to ask something.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I just wanted to appreciate the presentation insofar as the historical analysis and where we started on the zero-based analysis of 2008 and the 2015 analysis. But the reality is, if you look at that presentation, all the budget cuts that we have had subsequently took away the edge that we had obtained in relation to the zero-based budgeting. So we are back to where we were in 2008, and that's the reality. And we cannot carry out our mandate if we carry on just looking at our budget incrementally like this and looking at it against the departments. So we need an intervention. We actually need an intervention. The intervention that was taken in 2008 needs to happen now. I ask myself, when we interact with other legislatures, why we are so poor. It always looks like KZN is saying we can't do this and we can't do that. Although the presentation shows that we'll get 44 million next year and another 43 million in the 2028-2029 financial year, that is not going to address the inability of the legislature to perform. So, Chair, my submission would be that the zero-based budget assessment must be done now. And the legislature is the arm of government that approves the budget. It cannot be the arm of government that is asking to please not cut our budget. It needs to say, how are we going to be effective? And it needs to go back to a zero-based analysis of how we're going to be effective and say, what is it that is needed to make this legislature function? And that's where the conversation needs to start. Chair, I also am really appreciating the comparison to the other legislatures with the figures that we're getting. But the input by the members, and so far as the differences in the different provinces are concerned, is critical. Yes, we're closer to Gauteng. Gauteng has only come up now to be an 80-member committee legislature, but we have been an 80-member legislature from the beginning. And when you look at the analysis, I've just done a simplistic division of the budget per the number of members. And it looks like, Gauteng has about 11.230 million per member, and KZN is 10.885 per member. Then you have a small legislature like Northwest with 38 members, and their budget looks low. It looks like it's 549 million. But if you divide 549 million by 38, it means that the allocation per member is about 14.459 million. So when we look at it like that, the KZN legislature with 80 members and what they have to do in the geographic area that they have with the big departments and the oversight of that budget, it isn't actually fair. And so it's the motivation is we need to go to zero-based budgeting again. And on slide 17, all the aspects that are put there in terms of cost cutting, the legislature is doing that currently. We are utilizing Dube Trade Port. We are reassessing our efficiencies. We are looking at, you saw earlier in my response, we indicated that the information officer, we're re-looking at it. So that's all the steps that we've taken is towards geared towards slide 17. And I also want to align myself to the issue of the top slicing. We especially the indication that KZN Treasury must be the ambassador at executive level for the top slicing. There's 3 arms of government. It's no use us within the Speakers Forum advocating for the top slicing and expecting it to come from one arm. There needs to be a concerted effort. So I think the second resolution I would like the committee to consider is to request that Treasury advocate for the top slicing at the executive level, whilst the legislature does it at the legislature level. Thank you, Chair. Those are my 2 points that I wanted to bring to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for that input, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I had raised my hand before Nobala, and Nobala spoke exactly on the point because, Chair, as you may be well aware, maybe that I will be leaving the Deputy Speaker in the meeting. We're going to speak on the issue of going directly, requesting the committee to speak with finance and going to top slicing, Chair. And we are calling on them the same way that we're going to continue with the commitment we made in the policy speech that will also be engaging the Premier directly on them, raising at the platforms that they sit in, because we don't sit in the same platforms, Chair. But I want also to leave this meeting having noted that it seems as if Treasury doesn't read the document that come from the legislature. Not only because of how they were repeating things that we're doing, but also by the implications, Chair. We once had this issue with them. We thought it has been resolved after the commitment from the HOD. From the HOD, Honorable Mbata, from HOD could see we have had a commitment that the people that are dealing with us would be closer to understanding the operations. I also think that we must suggest to them, including the budget analyst Chair of Treasury, to go also the route of being empowered sincerely and dearly in terms of the sector oversight model. FAMPLA and sector oversight model read together, Chair, including the same route that we have recommended to the committee, the budget committee, the budget office, because it's a legal structure that exists in our own sector. And so that when we come into the meeting, Chair, we don't have to be flared up because of how there's balkanization of that which is our responsibility as an institution, Chair. Otherwise, Chair, I am covered and going now with that of top slicing being made, a request that the DS remain in the meeting. Thank you so much, Chair, for the commitment and the commitment of all members in the committee.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I think there's one member left, Honourable Mbata.
Thanks, Chair, and my apologies. I thought I was muted when I was holding for someone, but I wanted to make a follow-up, Chairperson. But now I'm covered by the Secretary, so I won't make my follow-up. Thanks a lot, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we've discussed this at length. There is no answer yet. The problem still exists. We have taken a resolution to see the MEC of Finance. Unfortunately, twice we've been unsuccessful to get him here. We will endeavour to make arrangements to see him as quick as possible so that we can have clarity on how the way forward. in this instance. So we will then move to item 7.1, the request for condonation of 1.2 million unauthorized expenditure. That will be presented by Mr. Nkupane.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greeting to honorable members, Speaker and Deputy Speaker. Chairperson, this matter relates to the debt that was written off, that relates to the 2023-24 financial year, and it was brought to our attention by Provincial Treasury when we were concluding 2024-2025 financial year, which indicated that when they were converting our GRAP statements into modified cash, they identified that there was no budget that will accommodate the 1.2 million that was written off during that financial year. So we had to adjust the unauthorized expenditure in our 24-25 financial year to include the 1.2 million. So the statements that were audited by AG included the amount of 1.2 million after we received the advice from Provincial Treasury. In terms of legal implications, Chair, on 1.1, we are citing the various sections of FAMPLA that are applicable in terms of unauthorized expenditure, and specifically is bullet point number 3, which this submission was based on, which says if Parliament authorize unauthorized expenditure in terms of 20.2, but does not appropriate additional amount to cover the amount of the unauthorized expenditure, the unauthorized expenditure becomes a charge against Parliament's own funds. So this submission was based on this provision that we are not asking for additional funding to be provided to the legislature, but it be a charge against our own revenue. In terms of the background, Chair, on number 2, this matter arose during the 2024-2017 period, where we had an employee in the legislature who had fraudulently activated the various cell phone accounts on behalf of the legislature, and that's what translated to the 1.2 million. When it was discovered, then the said employee decided to resign, but the matter was then brought to the attention of STACOV then when we were presenting the 2017-18 annual report that we have uncovered a fraud relating to the 1.2 million, and we also indicated the steps that we'll be carrying out in terms of trying to recover the amount. The matter was referred to the state attorney to assist us with the processes in terms of making sure we recover all the amount that the legislature has suffered. There's been challenges with the state attorney's office, Chair, in that instead of citing the legislature as the plaintiff, they cited the premier as the plaintiff. So from the start of this process, it was already not following the correct process. And in October 2020, Chair, the defendant issued a notice indicating that they will be opposing the matter. So going back to the issue of the state attorney, Chair, there were 3 councils that were appointed to deal with this matter. The first one and the second one did not do much in terms of processing the matter, and only the third one is the advocate Mieni, who also advised the legislature to indicate that there are a number of issues that did not go correct in terms of handling this matter by the first 2 councils. And in terms of the issues, they're cited in page number 3, and those are the Roman numbers that are listed, that the summons were incorrectly referred to the plaintiff being the premier rather than the legislature, and the premier does not have a legal standing in the matter. And the period of prescription started during March 2018 and it ran until 29 March 2021. And in terms of number 5, it says the summons did not interrupt the running of the prescription period in respect of the claim by the legislature against the defendant. And based on this, Advocate Mieni's advice is that it will be difficult for him to defend the matter. And even if he goes ahead, the prospects of success are very slim. And based on this advice, Chair, it was recommended that the legislature consider writing off this amount. And we then considered looking at the debt management policy, given that if our prospects of success are very slim, it will be of no use to keep on pumping money toward this process if we will not recover anything. And in terms of our own policy, Chair, we had covered all the areas in terms of the policy to demonstrate that we should then consider this amount for write-off. But in terms of accounting for it, in our financial statements, we have correctly accounted for it, and the matter was cleared by the Auditor General and taking into account the guidance that we got from the Provincial Accountant General through the Office of the HOD of Provincial Treasury. Chairperson, you may remember that in the 24, when the STACOV met at Dube Trade Port, we made a presentation of the unauthorized expenditure of 20.7 million. That 20.7 million excluded this 1.2 million. Hence, we have attached a resolution of STACOV to say the 20.7 million has been dealt with. What is now outstanding is the 1.7 that needs to be considered by this oversight committee. So, Chairperson, in terms of this submission, it has been processed internally and supported by the accounting officer. And the recommendation is that under 4, that section 20.4 FAMPLA will be applicable, whereby the approved unauthorized expenditure becomes a charge against Parliament's own revenue. And in terms of the own revenue that we are referring to is the 29 million that we underspent in terms of the 2024-25 financial year, which has been audited. And if the committee considers this recommendation, that will be where the cost will be accounted for. The submission has been approved by the executive authority to be tabled at this meeting for consideration. Chairperson, we also attached the internal documents that were supporting the write-off in terms of the amount of 1.2, and they demonstrate that we have complied with all the requirements of the policy in terms of making sure that we are considering writing off the amount. And the key issue, Chairperson, is that the write-off was in 2024 financial year, and during that financial year, we did not have adequate funding to cover this matter. Hence, it's coming back to the committee for consideration. Thank you very much, Chairperson. And
Thank you, Mr. Kopani. Do we have the funds now?
Chairperson, in terms of the recommendation, we are seeing the savings from the previous financial year could be used to cover the unauthorized expenditure of 1.2.
Just on a clarity issue, you used the word under expenditure, and now you're using the word savings. Can you clarify that?
Chairperson, in terms of our budget, we had a budget of 852 for that financial year, and our spending on it it was not 852. It was less by that amount that refers to 29 million. Whether it's underspending or savings, it means we have to interrogate the figures to say which one were funding, underspending, and which ones were savings.
But that is very important, because we've been going on now about the shortage of money in this legislature. We as a committee will be embarrassed if we demand more money from Treasury, and Treasury says to us, why? You underspent X amount. Why are you asking us for more money? It's very difficult for us.
No, further addition to that, Chairperson, in the 2023-24 financial year, Chairperson, that's where we seriously had this challenge of overspending on our budget. So it simply means, because of the budget cuts and the submission that we considered in the previous meeting in October last year, it indicated that we were underfunded in terms of compensation of employees. And two, we were also underfunded in terms of the number of bills that were processed during that financial year. So that resulted into the over expenditure that we incurred. We carried those over expenditure into the 2024-25 financial year, because we had a number of accruals that we had reported at the end of the financial year. So looking at the budget of the 2024-25 financial year, we had to first honor the invoices that relates to the 2023-2024 financial year. So as a result, it may seem as if the legislature did not utilize its full budget that was allocated in the 2024-25 financial year. But the reality is, Chairperson, the funds were not in the bank. We used those funds to honor the invoices relating to the previous financial year. So as a result of the delay in the processing of the unauthorized expenditure of the 20 million, which Provincial Treasury is undertaking already to process during the current midterm adjustment, it will mean then our bank balance would improve, and we will also be in a position to then honor some of the programs of the legislature. So at the moment, it's a matter of, we have funds in the bank account. At the moment, we don't have them, because there's a process that still needs to unfold to make sure that we have the funds. Thank you, Chair.
Just then, before I give it over to the members, do you want us to take a resolution to condone that writing off of that amount? Yes.
Chairperson, that's the recommendation.
Okay, thank
you.
Members, any questions? Please. Legit, Honourable Legit, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the official for the explanation. I just would like to get some clarity as to this 1.2 million expenditure and fraud that's being dealt with by the state attorneys. What exactly is the nature of the fraud? You said it had to do with cell phone contracts to the value of 1.2 million. I'm not understanding what you mean by cell phone contracts. Was there some sort of illicit arrangement between the individual and a provider of SIM cards? So just to flesh that out. And also, I think that clarity will help us understand what sort of checks and balances one can implement to prevent such an occurrence from happening again. And how was this picked up on? I think it could be a telling lesson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The fraudulent activities that happened within the legislature relates to the cell phone accounts that were fraudulently activated by the said employees. It was more than 100 of cell phone contracts that were activated, and the legislature had to pay for those contracts over a period of 24 months. So that's how it compounded to 1.2 million. In terms of how we uncovered it, we did a normal audit or verifying the lines that are in use by the legislature, and based on that, we picked up that there are accounts that are not utilized by legislature employees or members. Hence, then it led to this fraud, and the said employee decided to resign after we have uncovered this. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mlongwane.
Angibonge sihlalo ngikubingelele. Honorable members, of course, the speaker and the secretary with the entire team of the legislature. No, Chair, just two issues or even one. This is under expenditure. I think we must say that it's under expenditure. It's not savings. It could be referred as a savings because the legislature, of course, is governed differently in terms of what formula, but it remains in under expenditure. You know, the reason that you do not take it back to Treasury because of the legislation, but it remains the under expenditure, and it must be condemned, really. You know, and I want to know under which areas were those under that under expenditure. You know, what under expenditure on what items? You know, Chair, there are various activities that requires our work as members. We are told there is no money, and at the end of the financial year, there's 29 million savings. What does that mean? And who take accountability? Because it cannot be that it's just a report that there's a saving. There should be accountability and consequences for such, because it means we would have not done our function as members of the legislature that we are supposed to have done, you know, because of there's no money. But few months down the line, there is not an under expenditure, a saving. It's called a saving, you know. So I think we really ought to get a proper clarity on that, and you know there need to be accountability. When there is under expenditure, there need to be accountability. But I want to know under which line items with those under expenditure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kopani. Maybe I can just add to that question. It was lucky that we had that money available. Just imagine we didn't have it available, and it was not a saving or a whatever it's called. All the money was spent. That would have been a huge problem. So will you be able to tell the committee on what items was there under expenditure during that period?
Thank you, Chairperson. If I understand, the question relates to the 24-25 financial year, the underspending of 29 million. I think Chair is covered in the next agenda item, unless you want me to address it now.
But you can address it.
Okay. Chairperson, the underspending of 29 million relates to compensation of employees. There's an amount of 9.9 million there. We had to process virements to cover that amount. And under goods and services, there's 8.5 underspent, mainly due to legislature activities being scaled down during the first quarter of the 24-25 financial year. And there's also a direct charge of 7.5 million. We had over-provided. These are exit gratuities that are payable to members of the 6th term that did not make it to the 7th term of the legislature. So in terms of direct charge, that's the amount that is payable to provincial treasury. That's the only amount that the legislature surrenders to the provincial treasury if we underspend on direct charge and as well on members' remuneration. But on our operational budget, if we underspend, we retain that amount and we don't surrender it to provincial treasury. Under transfers and subsidies, there's 2.6 million underspent on transfer and subsidies, and this is due to payments that were due to payment of subscription fees, both to other associations like CPA and legislature employee organization. Under capital payments, there's an underspend of 10.4 million, and that relates to the pending invoices that relates to the laptops for officials. We had already procured laptops for members, but we had not concluded the process that relates to the employees. We have recently concluded the tender process for the employees, and that underspending will be channeled towards the payment of invoices. So in terms of our accrual accounting, we had already accounted for those in terms of accrual because legislature report in terms of accrual accounting, not modified cash accounting. So that accounts for the 29 million that we have already accounted for as under expenditure for the 24-25 financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And it does form part of the next item also.
Chair, I was reading from the next
Yes,
item, Chair.
Any other question? Honourable Mbata.
Thank you, Chairperson. I have so many questions to ask, but I think I'll ask 2 or 3. Firstly, how did the legislature allow the fraudulent activity of 1.217 million cell phone fraud to continue between this period, I think from 2014 to 2017, without any detection? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what mechanism are now in place to ensure fraudulent procurement activities cannot recur? And then lastly, should there be a stricter enforcement of Section 25 of the FMPPLA, which requires a recovery from the person responsible, or does prescription make this impossible? Thanks, Chair.
Chairperson, what triggered this fraudulent to be investigated was the spike in the expenditure relating to the cell phone. And that prompted that we then have to do an internal audit review of that section relating to the authorization of cell phones. So based on that, Chairperson, we came up with recommendations as to what needs to happen. In the past, the employee concerned had the authority to authorize the activation of cell phones. And now that responsibility has been split between the managers relating to that section. So the employee doesn't have that authority anymore in terms of authorizing the activation of a cell phone. And since we had implemented the control, Chairperson, there's been no repeat of such, and is part of our internal audit review each and every year. And the reports indicate that there has been no repeat since we improved the controls. In terms of Section 25, Chairperson, if the matter is prescribed, I'm not sure if my legal guru could insist as to whether we could still pursue the matter if it is prescribed. But based on the advice that we received from the council, it was indicating that the chances of succeeding are very slim. and it will be difficult to defend the prescription issue if it's raised by the defendant. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe if I can just follow on that.
Okay.
Firstly, if I understood you correctly, it was referred to an attorney. You can't go directly to an advocate. The attorney appointed an advocate to prepare particulars of claim, a summons. That is done under the auspices of the legal department of this legislator. So there's different levels of oversight that those particulars is correct. Notwithstanding that oversight, what happened here is an unbelievable negligent mistake, because the plaintiff should be the legislator, but it was the Premier. That is unacceptable. Not even a first-year law student should make such a mistake. So there is a negligent legal team. Was there any consideration to sue the negligence of the attorney that signed that summons? Number one. Number two, even if the matter has prescribed, what happened in the criminal matter? Because surely if it's fraud, it's a crime, it should have been reported to the police, and those that were involved in that should have been punished. And some advice, free of charge. The Magistrate Criminal Court can make, in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, a payment plan to try and recuperate money. So there is even processes in the Criminal Act to assist recuperating monies that was lost, specifically where the state is involved. So I'm worried on the process that was followed and the negligence of the legal representatives. Was there consideration in taking them to task? Because they are not blameless. Thank you.
If you allow, maybe our legal colleague can respond to that. Mr. Sukraj.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, there was consideration for reporting the State Attorney. What happened was that there were a number of issues. This matter was discussed at the Public Sector Lawyers Forum because throughout the province, there's been complaints of negligence on the part of the State Attorney. So what we did at a provincial level was that we collated all of the matters in which the State Attorney had either failed to act or didn't act properly, and that was reported to the Minister of Justice, Chair. We did request that the Minister of Justice actually take the provincial State Attorney to task for all of those matters. So we put this matter in the basket of all the matters that were reported to the Minister of Justice, and we're waiting for the Minister of Justice to actually take it further, Chair.
Thank you so much, members. Any further questions? I think we can then move over to the request to take a resolution to support the condonation of 1.2 million unauthorized expenditure. I call upon members to raise a hand in support of such a resolution. Are we not going to support it?
Chairperson, it's Imran Kika. I move for the support of the resolution to condone that.
Thank you so much, Honourable Kika. Anybody to second the support? Honourable Ndlopa, thank you very much. We have carried the resolution to condone the condonation of 1.2 million unauthorized expenditure. Members, we're getting now to the 7.2, the 24-25 first quarter budget performance report that the CFO has touched a little bit, but if you can proceed with that, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. There are two reports in terms of the item. The first one is the closeout report, Chairperson, for the 24-25 financial year, and followed by the 25-26 first quarter budget performance. And I will propose, Chairperson, that I start with the closeout report, then followed by the first quarter.
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in terms of how we close the year, I'll be covering, Chairperson, the budget allocation, the receipts, the expenditure by program, allowance paid to political parties, unauthorized, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and our action plan in terms of AGM's management report for the previous financial year. Chairperson, our budget in terms of the 24-25 financial year, it was 852 million, 274 allocated to administration program, and 449 million allocated to parliamentary business, and members' remuneration, it was 128 million, totaling 852. The next slide shows the same budget per economic classification, and also it shows the adjustments that were processed during the midterm budget adjustment for that financial year. In terms of our receipts, we had revenue that was over-collected by 2.1 million, and the bulk of it, Chairperson, was coming from interest on bank account, where we collected 1.4 more than the budget, and as well, sale of capital assets. That's where, Chairperson, we collected money relating to the tools of trade that the members of the sixth term opted that they will retain those tools of trade, and they then paid for such. So that's where the bulk of our revenue came from for that financial year. In terms of expenditure by programs, as reported earlier on, Chairperson, the underspending for that financial year, it's sitting at 29 million, and under administration, 19.1 million related to underspend in terms of, as indicated that in the previous financial year during the first term, there were scaling down of activities, but as well there were other invoices that were paid as well during that financial year. And under parliamentary services, the underspend was 2.5 million, and the scaling down of activities also played a role there, Chairperson. And we are aware that we didn't have workers and youth parliament during that financial year of 2024-25. And under direct charge is the underspend that relates to exit gratuity. That was over provision in terms of the amount that we requested from provincial treasury. The next slide, Chairperson, talks to expenditure by economic classification. That's the slide that I was reading earlier on when there was a question, and I'm not sure, Chair, if I need to repeat it again, but the underspending was on compensation of employees, goods and services, direct charge, transfers and subsidies, and as well as payment for capital budgets for that financial year. And in terms of political party funding, Chairperson, we managed to disperse total amount of 222 million to all the political parties that were represented during that financial year, including those that did not make it after the elections of 2024. In terms of unauthorized, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Chairperson has reported unauthorized expenditure of 1.2 million was added to the amount of 20.7, which the committee had considered, and that took the balance to 21.9 million. And in terms of our reporting, accordingly, we reflected that the 20.7 million had already been approved by the Oversight Committee with funding, and what was now outstanding is the 1.2 million, which was considered by the committee in the previous agenda item. Under fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Chairperson, the balance is sitting at 15 million at year end. Those are the no-shows that are still under investigation, and we are reporting a nil balance in terms of irregular expenditure. Chairperson, the next slide talks to what I've already covered in terms of the three areas, and including the 1.2 that we were advised that it should be included in our unauthorized expenditure. Slide number 11, Chair, talks to our audit action plan that are related to the prior financial year. And in terms of all the issues that were raised by the Auditor General, they were addressed, and that led to the clean audit that we also retained in the 24-25 financial year. Chair, that takes care of the first part, which is the closeout report. With your permission, I can continue to the first quarter.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. The first quarter will follow the same in terms of the tables of content, and in terms of our budget, Chairperson, our budget is now 850 for the current financial year, and 487 is parliamentary business, administration is 263, and members' remuneration is 99 million. In the previous presentation, it was above 120 because it was including exit gratuities that are payable to the members. And then in terms of economic classification, that's how it's been recorded. And in terms of departmental receipts, we are over collecting again is the interest on bank account, which accounts for the largest amount in terms of collection. That is 196,000 that we have collected over in the first quarter of the financial year, and as well as transaction in financial assets and liabilities. These are the costs that we recover from other departments, mainly the Office of the Premier. When we host events together with them, we procure and recover the costs from the Office of the Premier. In terms of expenditure by programs, as of June, the expenditure is at 19.3, and Chair, what contributed to this is the delay in terms of the processing of the budget for the current financial year. It had an impact in terms of the activities of the legislature during the first quarter of the financial year. And it affected both programs, administration, as well as parliamentary services largely. And as well, direct charge, the underspend is at 1.2 million. And in terms of expenditure by economic classification, Chairperson, under compensation of employees, the underspend is 40.8 million, and it's largely due to the procurement or recruitment processes that is underway in terms of the filling of vacant funded positions. And other goods and services underspend is at 10.2 million. And this is largely due to the delay in terms of the passing of the budget and as well as the provision that is being made for voter education, which is part of our baseline for the current financial year. Under transfer and subsidies, the underspend is due to the payment of subscription payable to CPA and legislature employer organization. And under capital payments budget, underspend was 2.2, and it's mainly due to the procurement of tools of trade for employees. Chairperson, in terms of represented political parties, we are now reporting in terms of the 6 parties that are represented in the 7th term, and those are the allocations that have been paid to all the parties, ranging from Umkhonto weSizwe to National Freedom Party, totaling 55.5 million that has been paid during the first quarter of the financial year. Chairperson, the next slide talks to unauthorized, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. The amount are still the same as previously recorded in terms of the previous report, and the future report, then Chairperson will then indicate that the 1.2 million has already been supported by this committee. Then the slide 11, Chairperson, is the audit action plan relating to the legislature. And in terms of the items that have been raised by the AG from the 2024-25 management report, there are a total of 6 findings, and all those 6 findings have been resolved already. Hence, we received another clean audit for the 24-25 financial year. Thank you, Chairperson. That concludes.
Thank you, sir.
Reports. Thank you.
Yep. Once again, congratulations with the clean audit. Members, it's now your opportunity to ask questions. I implore you to look at the expenditure as was already done by Honourable Longwana. I read one word over and over, and that's under expenditure. So please ask questions. Honourable Kika. Honourable Kika.
Thank you.
Honourable Kika, check if your microphone is not muted. Okay, while you're sorting it out, Honourable Mbata.
Thanks, Chairperson. Under the goods and services underspend of about 10.2 million, delays in Treasury Chair, or the process, that delay, it is directly paralyzing the oversight and voter education. And under expenditures here is not even inefficiency, it's a systematic sabotage. How can you then, going forward, avoid that? That's the first question. Probably I'll come back with a follow-up. I just want to understand that. Thanks.
So Kopani, maybe you can answer that if you can.
Chairperson, as indicated, the underspend was mainly due to the delay in the processing of the budget for the 25-26 financial year. So I don't think there would have been any other activities that would have proceeded if there were limitations relating to the budget. So now that the budget has been passed, then it's up to the committee to make sure that they catch up with the implementation of the oversight action plan that they have approved for the current financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mbata, do you have another question?
Yeah. No, Chair, I'm covered. It's just that I'm trying to find a way of asking this question. But no, it's fine, Chair. I think if ever there's another question that I need to ask, I'll raise my hand. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Mbata. Yeah, unfortunately, what happened in Parliament gave us a curveball. Honorable Kika, are you back?
Chair, I'm not sure if I'm audible.
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, Chair, I wanted to also acknowledge and welcome the clean audit. It obviously is a sign that things are done properly in terms of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and ensuring that the work of the legislature continues. Also, I think the use of the lexicon in terms of FAMPLA versus the PFMA are distinct and different, and that we can't, I believe, can't conflate issues or even go so far as to juxtapose them, to change that lexicon. So when savings are being referred to, they do have an effect on the budget overall and as they carry. And I think in the presentations that they've been made, it has been demonstrated how they are actually used and how they are eventually applicable. So I think, the theme that has run through the conversations about under expenditure is not one that I myself can accept in terms of the manner in which FAMPLA is actually applied. And also earlier on, I mentioned, the manner in which allocations are done between Treasury and also in terms of those things that need to take place through the Speaker of the National Assembly. So those streams of the management of the funding of the legislature are something that we need to grapple with in terms of our use of the lexicon in terms of these two things and how we understand them and how they're applicable. Because what emerges out of the presentation that is done is that the funds are eventually used and there's always a need for more. So I'm just trying to put that on the table, and I'm not sure if I was here for once to respond to that or not.
CFO, will you be able to respond? Maybe I can do the following, because I think it's important. Honorable Kika, what do you mean by the lexicon and the difference? What do you mean by that?
Look, there's a distinct difference. FAMPLA doesn't refer to it as, and the manner in which the funding is allocated is actually something that is considered as a saving in terms of how it is applied. Because we can carry over those funds, unlike it being returned to Treasury, for example. So the funding is a saving, in fact, and it can be used through a different means, as from the PFMA, where funding is surrendered. So there is no surrendering of funding in this process, and that is what I'm trying to say. And I'm trying to understand that if the CFO can just respond to that.
Chairperson, I still don't get the question, but I can confirm that the legislature accounts in terms of accrual accounting. And in terms of accrual accounting, probably if you take into account the accruals that we processed during 424-25 financial year into account, we would have exceeded our budget by a huge amount, because we take into account the liabilities that we have committed the institution to pay in the next 12 months. that is being accounted for in terms of accrual accounting. But however, in terms of modified cash, which is what the departments are doing, they account in terms of the money that they received and the expenditure that they've incurred in that financial year, not necessarily taking into account the accruals that are in the system. So that's the big difference between our FAMPLA as well as PFMA. And it's true, Chairperson, that when we underspend in terms of our act, we retain, we don't apply for rollover in terms of what the departments are doing. When they underspend in terms of what is being allocated to the department, they apply for rollover to the provincial treasury for those funds to be considered. And it's dependent on the provincial treasury if they will approve or will not approve such. In our case, we retain the funds and we simply indicate to provincial treasury as to how the funds need to be reappropriated back to the legislature so that they form part of our next financial year's budget, and then the funds can be then properly utilized in terms of the AOP or the APP that relates to that financial year. I'm not sure to what extent am I addressing the concern by Honorable Kika.
So
Thank you, Chair.
if I understand you correctly, it differs from normal under expenditure that it stays with the legislator, but it will just be appropriated to the next budget. Can it be set off against over expenditure at the current budget, or must it go over to the next budget?
Person, the Act also provide for virements that if there's pressure areas within our budget, we can process virements. Obviously, there's a limit of 8% that is allowed. So the accounting officer can process virements to cover the pressure areas. And if there's still an amount of underspending, is then processed into the next financial year, but it needs to be reappropriated back in terms of the appropriation bill to be part of the legislature's budget for that financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, any further questions?
Chairperson, I think, may I just come in there?
Please do.
I think for my edification and that of the members, I think that that was an explanation that was very necessary, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Kika, but just remember one thing, although it's a bookkeeping exercise, the reality of under expenditure will be a lack of service delivery on that particular issue. Often, not all the time, but often. So it's not without its difficulties. Members, I think we've exhausted this item. The next one is 7.3.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, before you move on to 7.3, I think we just want to acknowledge that the comments around the underspending, under expenditure, and take that forward as the team. But just for the specifics in terms of the 2024-2025, we started basically with elections in May. So it was scaling down from March to May, and from May to August, it was establishment and setting up. So it wasn't business as usual. And I think that's where a lot of the under expenditure comes from in the 2024-2025 year. Just to give members some context, but the principle that members have raised and you yourself have raised, we're internalizing it, Chair, and we will ensure that we stick as close to the budget as possible, understanding all the challenges. We just wanted to give you some comfort in that regard. Thank you.
Secretary, just a follow-on on that. Am I correct that in the future there will not be a scaling down of the legislator process purely for election purposes?
You are absolutely correct, Chair. In fact, this committee took that as a resolution that we are committed to, and we will be implementing it. There's been a change management processes around that. There'll be no scaling down at the end of this term. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, we'll then move to 7.3. Mr. Khumalo.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, honorable members and colleagues. In terms of our performance for the first quarter, we have a total of 22 targets in the APP, but the ones that were due in this quarter were a total of 16, 7 in Program 1 and 9 in Program 2. Chair, we have, in terms of performance, we have achieved all the targets that were due for this quarter, but I must indicate, Chair, that one of the targets that is reported as achieved relates to the finance hearings. That report, because of the withdrawal of the appropriation bill and the retabling of the bill, again in the second quarter, we are going to see a similar report coming back as an achievement. So if we project at the end of the year, we may have a theoretical overachievement in this indicator, but we basically will explain what actually happened there for purposes of audit and the likes. But basically, Chair, we are on track in terms of our targeting, and in terms of internal audit, the process of reviewing the current performance report is still underway. In terms of the Auditor General, that now relates to the annual report. The annual report, currently we are dealing with the inputs that are coming from the AG and the internal audit. We should be able to table the annual report at the end of this month. We are on track. Thank you, Chair. Basically, I consider that the report has been circulated and read, but these are the highlights of the report. Thank you.
Mr. Khumalo, how do you overachieve? Is that a good or a bad thing?
If there's an opportunity to overachieve, I think you take an advantage, Chair. Thank you, Chair. If there is an opportunity to overachieve, you take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.
Overachieve is good.
Yeah.
Members, any questions regarding this item? I think we've reached that stage of the meeting where the questions are a bit scarce. Oh, sorry, Honourable CQ. I apologize, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, no more my income. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. No, I want to understand the overachievement in a quarter or in achievement outside the financial year. Can I get a clarity there? Because maybe I will have a follow-up question if it is not within the quarter.
Through you, Chair. The overachievement I'm referring to is that against the target of finance hearings reports for the year, we have 3 for the year. But for this quarter, the target was 1. We achieved that target, but when we had achieved the target, the appropriation bill, both nationally and locally, was withdrawn. But we have done the work and the report is in, which also means the work that had been done in the first quarter was null and void. So we had to restart again when the appropriation bill was retabled. So I'm saying in the second quarter, we are going to see another report of finance hearing, which should have happened in the first quarter, but you're going to see it again in the second quarter. Meaning we have, in the second quarter, there are 2 reports that are now going to come through. The quarter that is the target that is due in the second quarter, plus the rehash that we did in the first quarter, for the first quarter. So next quarter, we are going to achieve, instead of 1, we are going to have 2. Theoretically, it's an overachievement. But actually, it's what we have done in the previous month. I don't know if I'm explaining this clearly. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you for the explanation. But I want to check, is it not that you said you overperformed or overachieved? Is it not that the target that you set for yourself was low?
Through you, Chair, the annual target is 3. But the actual achievement, if we are going to achieve the 3, is going to be 4, because one of the 3 was repeated. Then you're now having 4. That's what I refer to as at the end of the year, we may actually have an overachievement of 4, theoretically. However, Chair, it's an overachievement of 1, yes. But however, Chair, the reason why we report this is because the AG also follows.
Yes.
You have this target, but now you are reporting 4. And what is the implication? Did you spend more money or not? That is something that we'll have to also consider. We read, so we did spend slightly more because we had to redo. But I know most of those hearings, they were virtual, so we minimized the expenditure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Anything else? I think we've reached the end of our meeting. I just want to thank all the honourable members for participating so efficiently and effectively and asking questions. It is our house we're looking at. We must keep it clean because we are clean and we have clean audits. So let's stay clean. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair.
Can you believe you should?